Now the last video I made was the video on the chin anchor or the low anchor point used in traditional archery. This was an opinion, it was a bit of a hot take, and I expected people to have different experiences, different mileage, and therefore disagree. That I've come to accept. The other thing I've come to expect and accept is that people will pull things out of context. So of course I got messages saying, hey, this was used in the Barebow Championship and it worked really well. Yes, a modern Barebow Championship using string walking. And then people might say, oh, but Brady Ellison uses this and he wins virtually everything. And yes, literally every Olympic archer uses the same anchor point when shooting in Olympic recurve. That isn't the point. I do make it a point to specify and clarify throughout the video what exactly I'm talking about. I say during the video, if you're going to be shooting trad bow, close distance, then you probably be using something like 3 under and pull into your cheek, or split finger, pull into your cheek. I say before the video, but wait, you might say, that's what the Olympians use. I put it in the actual title, and if you don't even get that far, for those who don't realize, I do color code my thumbnails. In case you don't realize, my playlist and my thumbnail background color actually reflects the context I'm speaking about. It's gold for Olympic recurve, it's blue for Asiatic, it's green for traditional, and so on. So thematically, I'm trying to convey context without having to waste 5 minutes per video explaining the entire history of archery and where we're at right now. And this isn't just the most recent video, it's happening since I started making archery videos on YouTube. It happened during my Olympic swing archery video, where a lot of comments were like, well, this wouldn't work in war because you would drop your bow and you would die. Yes, it's a video clearly titled Olympic archery, not military archery. Or even when I did the topic about using the opposite draw with the Mediterranean bows and long bows, and people were like, yeah, but Mongols used it and they shot the other side. Yeah, the Mongols are using a thumb draw, and we're not talking about thumb draw. The point is, context is king here. I don't want to reframe every single video within every context every single time, because it does get kind of obnoxious. And I do trust that the viewer probably isn't dumb, and therefore can read, they have eyes, they can process that we're talking about a particular kind. Now, this problem is kind of more unique to me, I guess, as an online creator, because I do cover multiple forms of archery, and therefore people from different kinds of archery and different level of experience might gravitate towards me. I make beginner content, I make recurve, I make Asiatic and traditional, and in contrast, other creators might not get the same level of confusion. I doubt that someone like Jake Kaminsky, who clearly does Olympic recurve, probably won't get questions about compound or thumb draw. I doubt Armin Hermer, who does thumb draw, gets lots of questions about compound and recurve, and I doubt that someone like John Dudley or Clay Hayes will get opposing viewpoints from Tudor practitioners, because we understand that the people we'll look at and we learn from are specializing in a particular kind of archery. As someone who crosses the boundaries and does the plurality of archery, I guess, I tend to see things a bit differently. I don't compartmentalize styles into particular pigeonholes or disciplines. I just do archery as archery. And that kind of creates this kind of mixture of different concepts and understandings, which, as an ambassador of multiple disciplines, I like to promote. Archery is pretty much 85% the same across multiple styles. It's at 15%, which are differences and nuances which people get really hung up over. But we're trying to see the big picture. There's a lot of similarities, a lot more than you think there are, which I'll probably talk about in a different video. And I think there's more to be said about the general language used around archery, because the language used is often very Eurocentric or Western-centric. When we say the words like traditional archery, people will often think of the American traditional archery with the flat bows, rather than Asiatic traditional archery, which is thumb draw based. And again, if we get even further back, just the whole concept of different archery styles in general, the idea that there are different styles of archery is a relatively modern language invention. I just think of swords and HEMA as a good example of this, because in most languages, the word for sword was sword in some way. There wasn't so much a different kind of sword, but swords were swords. It might be a long sword or a curved sword or a two-handed sword, but there wasn't the same classification and distinction that we would say today. Like, we know a katana is a Japanese sword, but katana means sword. And we have a similar thing with archery, where like the word for bow and archery is just the word bow and archery in that particular language. So we might, in our minds, distinguish, say, kyudo from Arab archery or modern archery, but the word kyudo means way of the bow, and that's what archery is. Archery is either the way of the bow, or archery, or arcing, or something to do with a bow. So the terminology we use to describe archery often lacks context, because someone doing archery at Archery Ascension, which is Ottoman archery, will say they're doing archery. Not saying they're doing Ottoman archery or Turkish archery or Arab archery. They're doing archery because their styles are actually amalgamation of Turkish and Arab sources. So to them, it's archery. You come to my club here and you train in barebow or traditional or recurve or compound, you're still doing archery. You don't say, I'm doing compound, I'm doing recurve, you're still doing archery, because in our context, we know what we're talking about. But when applied to a no-context discussion, let's say online, or showing a video or a photo, often because the context is missing, we mean different things because they're assumed knowledge. And this is very common when people post things like thumb draw form checks or photos. We get a lot of people who will argue that you're doing it wrong. You're shooting the wrong finger, the wrong side, because you're missing context. It happens a lot, unfortunately. And that can lead to a bit of a disagreement, especially when people are closed-minded. They stamp their feet down and say, no, I was taught this way, therefore this is the only correct way. And it again happens with things like having all your fingers on the bow, because in Asiatic styles, it's normal to hold the bow with all your fingers in a tight grip. Of course, in Western styles, it tends to be loose grip, and if you're holding it, it's a death grip, therefore you're wrong. Things like stances, things like posture, arm guards, equipment. There's a lot of differences within that 15% of difference in the nuances. But those are the things which require context. And when people jump the gun, they make the conclusion, they jump the conclusions rather, that's when we get a bit of tension sometimes. These are valuable learning opportunities. These are cross-cultural opportunities. We can learn from each other, from different styles. And it's really fascinating when you get to teach someone and they learn how to shoot different styles. It's actually a really amazing experience. But it gets really hard sometimes when people refuse to acknowledge that differences do exist, and they'll make preconceived judgments based on preconceptions which may not be well informed. So that's my little hot take on the whataboutism in archery. I don't think it's a major problem that's going to cause any drama or anything. It's just that as part of a worldwide archery community, and especially in my community on my channel where we do cover and address many different styles and platforms, there are lots of things which won't necessarily apply to you or apply to you in the same way. And it's kind of on you as well to recognize that it may be different for me, but it's also different because I'm doing a different style of archery. So with that in mind, I do appreciate the comments, of course. I'm not annoyed by this really. I'm just a small thing that's been kind of in the back of my mind for the last 10 years or so when I've learned different kinds of archery. There's still a lot of hiccups in terms of loss in translation and miscommunication. And I do hope to clarify that when I say this is a video about Asiatic archery, it might not apply to other styles and vice versa and so on. Anyway, hope that was something that's somewhat thought-provoking, if anything else. Thank you all for watching, and hopefully we'll see you next time.